good friend, Dr. Erin Jacobs Stagner, with me today. Many of you, if you've watched my Facebook Lives, you've seen us on here many times because she kills it in practice and has taken that passion to develop a second stream of income. She also attended our very first public speaking event that Roberto Monaco, who is the week 14 coach in the boot camp, and I did together last November. And since that time, determined I'm getting my message out there, and has appeared on 14 stages inside and outside of chiropractic. So that's what happens when you ignite your purpose, change your identity, and determine in your heart, I'm doing this. I'm getting my message out. And that's also why I have asked Dr. Erin to be one of our speakers at the Peds Boot Camp, the Pediatric Boot Camp at Sherman College, February 29th and March 1st. You can see it above. So Erin, welcome. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So Erin, let's start with your story. What made you become the special needs specialist?
Sure. So my oldest daughter is 13 now. So she, and you'll probably hear this again if you're at Sherman, but she was just delayed. She didn't talk on time. She didn't walk on time. She never crawled. There were just things that didn't show up like milestones that were supposed to. And I chalked it up being ignorant at the time. Even though I just graduated chiropractic school, I didn't know anything about autism at the time. I didn't know anything about special needs kids, and I just chalked it up to her being slower and just taking her time. And I really fought the pediatrician about different diagnoses. You know, we started off with pervasive developmental delay, and then we moved into, well, maybe she has some kind of hearing problem, which that was fine. And then maybe we have a speech problem. So, I mean, there were different diagnosis after diagnosis after diagnosis. And it just became ridiculous. Like, I really had to, as a mom, say, okay, maybe she's not okay. Maybe she's not going to be a normal kid. Maybe she's going to be different somehow. And it really took me about 10 years to come to that conclusion that, hey, you know what, she's going to be different. And a lot of school testing and a lot of different traveling to different we've been to the University of Tennessee and Vanderbilt and all over the place trying to get an answer to it. And it just ends up, she's autistic. And it was a bitter, hard pill for me to swallow. And I just came to the conclusion that I wasn't going to allow that to happen for other moms and dads out there, that I wanted to give them the ability to communicate freely with their providers and give the providers a clue of, like, this is what mom and dad are seeing at home. Please help us interpret this. I wanted there to be a common language between both, when a lot of times we get it's just confusing for everybody. So I just wanted to create that platform, and that's kind of where the special needs specialist came from.
So let's go back for a second. So
sure.
When she, you fought the pediatrician on the label, right? Or on the diagnosis. And then 10 years later, it was like, oh, she is autistic. Is that what they wanted to say at the beginning?
That was where they were headed. And because I fought it so hard, we took every other route short of that. And it finally just, the pediatrician labeled her that way, and I just refused to acknowledge it until we got to the point where it was blatantly obvious between the school and the pediatrician and all the outside information that we had, that it took me going, ding, ding, you should have seen this the whole time. And now, it's that mom guilt that shows up when you should have done something and you didn't, that now I'm like, this is not fair. I'm not going to let this happen to another parent. So that was really where the whole drive to create the special needs specialist came from.
So then, Erin, how does a parent balance the fact that it is a quick diagnosis? I feel like there are a lot of kids, and I'm going to go full on record to say this is not my area of expertise whatsoever. That's why I have amazing women like Erin in my life. So what about the, just like you didn't want to buy that diagnosis super quickly. How does the special needs specialist bridge that gap? Are you educating parents on what to look for, and their pediatrician typically wouldn't, or has your experience then provided that gap and made it that another family doesn't go through what you and your family went through?
Sure. So we start with the bare basics. Everybody needs to be on the same playing field and it needs to be level. So we start with, okay, we know that there's something that's not average or normal, and I hate that word, but neurotypical. So we start with, what does neurotypical look like? How does your brain work, the different areas that process things? How does your nervous system work? Because these kids need chiropractic care. And then what are the milestones that they should be meeting? And if they're not there, where are they? Like there's milestones between 0 and 6 that everybody should be, and they're divided into groups. So we start with, this is what they should be at birth, and then 6 months, and then 12 months, and we go all the way up to 6 years. And then it kind of gives parents the idea of like, okay, so maybe we're at like 3 with our vision, and maybe 2 with our touch or tactile senses, but maybe when we walk or we move, we're more like 5 or 6. So it kind of gives you, like, you can't, I have a hard time with making patients understand that, yes, my child may be 8, 9, or 10, but they didn't have the ability to crawl. So it puts them way back at like 6, 8, 9 months when you talk about their motor skills. So
Okay.
when you're trying to address that with the parent, I've come up with this way of going, okay, here's your chart, here's where they are, let's work with them and let's see how much improvement we can get. So
Nice.
it's really just education, education, education.
And then they take that as empowerment when they go to the pediatrician or they seek other services, that now they have this better analysis of where their child is. Is that accurate?
Yes. And what we can do. And that's the thing, is like, I'm not egotistical enough to think that I'm going to be the answer to everything, because it wasn't for my child. She was adjusted since she was born. Like, she got adjusted before I got to hold her. So I know that it wasn't, I'm not crazy enough or wild enough to think that, oh, chiropractic's going to heal her and she's going to be 100%. She needs outside help. And I had to come to terms with that. And I think that was the biggest thing, coming from a holistic view of like, well, if you just straighten out her nervous system, everything else is going to be fine. But it's her nervous system and her gut and how she processes the world is different than how everybody else does. So once you empower parents and even practitioners about, it's just a different way of processing things, and you have to figure it out. And once you figure it out, it's like, oh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And you step into their world, really.
Something that really helped me when I heard you present, you said, basically you had to adjust your expectations. Like normal,
Mm-hmm.
there's just a new normal. And I think of it in terms of, like the wires are different. The wires in a in an autistic child are not the same, right? Either they're not flowing the same, they're not interpreting the same. So we can't expect, it would be like expecting a four-wheel drive vehicle to perform like a race car. They're not going to
Mm-hmm.
perform the same. They're not going to function the same. So then that
Right.
education says, okay, this is a different vehicle. This is a different presentation. What are the milestones now for this presentation? Is that kind of accurate?
Yeah. Like for Maggie, okay, and I can speak to it because she's mine and I know she never crawled. So for her to expect to put her on a bicycle with her sisters and us ride down the street, I know better, okay? Because it's just not there. I can put her on a tricycle because she's more stable now and with 3 wheels instead of 2, but she still has trouble turning. And she's going to be, until we get her back on the floor and help her learn to crawl. So you can, and you hear this all the time where parents are like, oh, my child skipped it and we went straight from sitting up and rolling over to walking. And I'm going, no, 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 no.
Right.
That's going to be, you're looking at long-term issues that are going to
Yeah.
be affected by that.
Yes. I've heard
So,
that so many times. Even obviously my kids are older than than your kids. And I remember hearing that about parents, and I'm like, what's the race? Like, that's not normal.
Mhm.
Like, I just innately knew, like, no, I think they're supposed to do all of those stages. Like, because your child skips all this stuff doesn't mean they're advanced. There's actually probably something wrong. And that's part of the special needs specialist teaching, right? Is these are
Right.
the normal processes that the brain needs to go through. Is that accurate?
Yeah, there are steps in the development of the brain that have to be completed in order. When you start skipping those steps, you're short circuiting. Going back to the wiring analogy, you're short circuiting, and you're going to split that wire and patch it over something, and you're going to miss the connection in the middle, which is super important. And it's really hard to go back and have to learn that again.
So from a chiropractic perspective, and let's talk about what you're going to be sharing at the Pediatric Boot Camp, February 29th and March 1st at Sherman. From a chiropractic perspective, and as chiropractors, what do we do? What do we need to do better
It,
for this population
sure.
from a special needs specialist
It
perspective?
it goes back to your analysis. Like, how do you look at them? And we get so, at least in my practice, I get so attuned to, okay, they've got sciatica. I'm going to look at the SI joint in L5. And if it's not there, I'm going to check all the lumbars and this, and I'm going to check the glutes and the psoas. And you get into this routine pattern of, this is what you always look for. If there's a crick, you go to this level and this level and this level. And these kids, just throw it out the window. I mean, it's literally, it's the favorite part of my day. It's a jigsaw puzzle, and you take your pieces and you try to put them together, and they don't always fit. But I want to give you a baseline to try to say, okay, maybe I do need to look at it from this perspective. This kid that's sitting in the desk at school, that's constantly kicking the desk in front of him or can't sit still, maybe it's not that they have ADD and ADHD. It's that their nervous system is overloaded, or they need more sensation than they're getting. So it goes back to, step outside your regular chiropractic box and
Mm.
let's look at this from a different perspective.
I love that. Of like, let's just break it down. So you're going to be teaching all of us how to slow down that process, and even what to look for, right? Like, we'll find
Right.
what we're looking for, but if you don't even know what to look for as a doc, and kind of like when I did a Facebook Live with Dr. Andrea, who's also one of our speakers, of if you're adjusting children on any level, even if you're not claiming to be a pediatric specialist, if you're adjusting children, you have a duty, a responsibility, and an obligation to know this stuff and to be able to use it in your practice. Because the kids who are coming into your practice don't have the same nerve systems of kids 20 years ago, 10 years ago.
No.
Your responsibility, if you're going to care for them, it's your responsibility to be trained. Just like
Exactly.
we would all stand back and be like, oh, what's that doctor, that MD doing talking about the spine with no training? Well, what are we doing talking about this kind of stuff without training? And so that's why I have assembled the team of incredible speakers for the Pediatric Boot Camp. And we have all committed to, it is going to be intense. Like, we're going in, we're rolling up our sleeves, we're doing hands-on so that you return to practice on Monday, literally experience, like, not necessarily experience, but you have the tools to be able to do the best job in your community with these with pediatrics in general, from birth all the way up until they're 18. So if you
Mm-hmm.
haven't grabbed your ticket yet, I encourage you to do so. Pediatric Boot Camp, February 29th to March 1st. So Erin, as we sign off, I'm 4 minutes over. What do you have to say to our audience? I'm closer to 10.
The biggest thing is like, if I can't tell you how excited I am, just because some of my favorite speakers are going to be there, and I know that, like, when I get back, I'm going to be on fire. And there's a part of me that always gets just a little bit angry, because I'm like, how did I not know this? How did I not? Where did I might have missed something. Oh my gosh, I need to go back and get these kids and check them again, because now I have new information and new things to look for and new things to work on. So I always leave with this drive to like run and check them all as soon as I get home, you know? So that's something you can definitely expect that's going to happen Monday morning.
And I'm glad you brought that up because obviously marketing communication are my jam. And I am going to make sure that everyone has a plan of what do you do? What do you do now that you have all of this new information for the kids who may have slipped through the cracks in your practice, and give you all the absolute strategy to make you look like that family's hero instead of feeling like, oh, they're going to think I'm a schmuck because I didn't know. Nope. We're going to flip that switch and turn that page. It's not going to be like that at all. So Erin, thank you so much for joining me today. To all of you, God bless you today. Have a wonderful Tuesday. Make it your best one yet. See ya.